Hello, my name is Hailey, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a self-sustaining ecosphere, which is this picture right here. So first we're going to talk about what an ecosphere is. An ecosphere or a biosphere is a self-sustaining miniature ecosystem that does not need external resources. So this means that the ecosphere that you create will solely rely on sunlight to make all of the things that the creatures inside will need to survive and work together to create a self-sustaining habitat. So these are some examples of different ecospheres you can make. You can have a completely aquatic one, you can have just plants, or you can even go to the ocean and make an ocean-based ecosphere, which is this picture right here. And those are some different types you can make. But yeah, aquatic is usually the most popular method when making an ecosphere. The supplies you'll need any size jar or container with a wide enough opening or mouth. This is because when you're putting in the materials that you're collecting or have collected, it needs to have a big enough opening so that you can put those in without a problem. You're also going to need to go to a pond, a lake, or a river, or even the ocean to collect a substrate, which could be mud or sand. And then you're also going to need to collect some plants, some sticks from the surrounding area. You're going to make sure when you collect your plants that has roots so you can plant them later when you're assembling the ecosphere. You're also going to need water from the source you have chosen. And you're also going to need some separate containers for collecting materials. I used some old water bottles that we had and some Ziploc bags to keep my plants in. And you're also, I didn't write this down, but you're also, an optional thing you can have is some gloves because it could get a little messy and sometimes it's just better to have that just in case you change your mind later. Step one, you're going to have to go to a water source of your choice or something that's close by to your home. I chose the Merced River because it is 10 minutes away from my house. And it's quite easy to get to and walk around. This is just some pictures of me collecting the water from the source, and I added some pictures to show you what the area around me looked like. Step two, you're gonna have to collect your substrate from the source that you pick. I picked some of the material, or I scooped some of the material out of the river and some of the mud that was on the outer side of the river, as you can see in this picture, because I know that most creatures or critters or insects can live in the mud, so that would be interesting to see them come out later. But scooping up debris and gravel can disrupt the habitat, so make sure when you're doing this you pick a small area so you don't disrupt the habitat too much. So yeah, these are some photos. This is the jar I used, and you can see how I kind of filled it up. You can fill it up as much as you want. You want to make sure you leave at least some room for plants. I would have used probably a little less than this, but this is an okay amount to use too. Step three, you're going to collect the plant sticks and other desired materials from the surrounding area. As you can see, I collected some plants from the outside of the river that's close to the water, and I also was in the water collecting. And especially you want to collect in areas by the bush, like this bush area where there's a lot of things that could be living next to that. That's where I had my best luck in finding some good plants and rocks and sticks. And I also collected some sample from that area. And when I looked at the plastic bag, I actually found that there was a tiny, about this big fish in there. So I decided to leave it because I knew that it was small enough to live in the ecosphere that I was making. But I'll talk about that more in the next few slides. Step four, you're going to take all your materials home. You could do it on the site that you're at, but it might be a little bit easier to take them all home with you and do it then. But now you're going to assemble the ecosphere with all the materials you collected. First, you're going to go ahead and take your jar and lay down any rocks or substrate. I couldn't find very many rocks, which I thought was kind of odd, but I just went in with the substrate, which was like mud and sand. Then I added the collected plants that were growing in that substrate, and I planted them after I added the mud. And then after that, you're gonna add the water that you collected. As you can see in the back, I had the water bottles already there. And then after you assemble everything, you're gonna close the jar and let the magic happen. And after that, it should start to do the process, and you'll see that in the next few slides. So I took a picture of my Ecosphere right after I assembled it, and you're gonna see that it's gonna be very cloudy just because there's a lot of movement happening when you're trying to plant things and add sticks and rocks. So it's gonna be pretty cloudy for the first hour or day, depending on how big your jar is. But since mine was a much smaller jar, I noticed that it cleared up within a couple hours. So this was later that night. I took a picture with a light source in the back to kind of see what it looked like. And it looked pretty cool. And then in the morning, it was completely clear, so much more clear than the day before. Let's see here. Also, I wanted to take this time to mention you're not going to want to add any large animals or insects as they would need more resources to sustain life. Um, so that small fish I caught was very tiny, as you can see right here. It's super small, so I figured it would be okay. But if it was a larger fish, it would definitely need more space and a lot more food sources and stuff. So you wouldn't want to put that in there. Also, I wanted to talk about the different activity I saw um, during the day and during the night, but I will talk about that in the next slide. So the cool thing about this whole project and the whole purpose of it is so you can observe how ecosystems work, but on a smaller scale. So after it settles, you can see all the creatures living in your ecosphere. And this is actually really cool because this is when you find out what you actually put in there. So these are some things that I found in mine. As I mentioned, I found a tiny fish. I was looking it up and I couldn't find exactly what the species name was. So maybe somebody can help me out there. But I also found a tiny water bug that I couldn't get a picture of because it was moving so fast. But I also found a caddisfly, I believe is how you pronounce it, larvae, which is this guy right here. I have a picture I'm going to show you right now. But this is kind of what they look like. And there's tons of little microscopic creatures, like little tiny worms that were wiggling around, and little tiny little very small creatures in there. So you're going to find a lot of things. But I noticed that during the night, a lot more of the microscopic creatures would be more active. As in the morning, there would be mainly the fish moving around or the caddis larvae fly moving around as well. I also noticed that in the morning, a lot of bubbles come up from the substrate, and at night it's not like that. So I thought that was an interesting observation. And then also the fish tends to go up to the top of the jar at night, um, whereas in the morning he's swimming around and just doing his thing, looking for food in the substrate. And it's really cool to watch how these creatures interact with one another too. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a picture of the caddis fly larvae up close, the one that was in my jar. It's still kind of hard to see it just because it's really, really hard to spot it because they make this stick thing as their cocoon, and then the little part of them, I don't know if you could probably see the arm right here, but he blends in looking like a stick. So I didn't notice him at first until I was like, why is that stick moving? And then I noticed it, but yeah. So that is the things I found in mine. And then some of the learning outcomes that you could take home today is that you could learn how ecosystems and communities interact with each other and their environments on a much smaller scale. And it's really cool to learn about the different ecosystems that are occurring around you. You can even do this in like a puddle or like a planter box that you have that it's been like, if it has like water in it, you could do that. You can even learn about different ecosystems in your plants and the environment if you just put it in, if you want to do a biosphere instead of an aquatic ecosphere. But there's just so many things you can learn and like observe, and it's really fun to do. But you also can learn about how abiotic and biotic factors work together. Abiotic factors refer to non-living physical and chemical elements in the ecosystem. And biotic factors are living or once living organisms in the ecosystem. And this ecosphere is a totally self-contained system of biotic and abiotic components that work together to sustain life. So those are the two most important things that you're going to need, so that your ecosphere is self-sustaining. And these actually can last a very long time. When I was doing my research, it said that it could last up to 2 to 3 years, if you have your ecosphere in the proper position and where it's receiving sunlight or indirect light. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. These are the sources that I got my information from, and also some photos that I had taken when I was doing this experiment. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.